Welcome back to Everything Financial Radio. My name is Dennis Tubbergen. I'm your host. We are here every week at this time, and we have the pleasure of chatting today with Dr. David Eifrig, who is the editor of Retirement Millionaire as well as Retirement Trader, which is a bi-monthly advisory. And Dr. Eifrig, in the last segment, you mentioned that you write about health, and you are a guy with a very interesting background, is I guess what I should say. You spent some time with Wall Street investment banks, and you are also a licensed physician. So tell us, with everything going on with national health care, a lot of the changes we're seeing in that environment, you mentioned that you write about health myths, and in particular, you mentioned in the last segment vitamin D3. Can you expand on that thought for our listeners?
Sure. One of the things that's really common in our culture is this idea that you can take a pill and fix what ails you. And I'm really the antithesis of that. I don't believe it's true. There's lots of evidence that's out that shows, and again, as I said in the first half about wine and studying and trying to understand what exactly is the closer to what the truth is. In vitamins, there's been lots of research in large trials that questions kind of the wisdom of, for example, taking a multivitamin every day. In fact, there's some correlations with negative connections between that, higher rates of mortality and morbidity. And so I take a multivitamin about once a week. I think that's a way to get enough of the sort of micronutrients in case I'm not getting them in my common American diet. But the real concern I have growing now is vitamin D3. And just about everywhere I go, someone will come up to me and say, hey, I'm taking X, I'm taking 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 units of vitamin D3. What do you think? And I can tell you just immediately, it's one of the most dangerous things that's happening in American healthcare today. Doctors are brand labeling vitamin D3 in their offices to make some extra money because Medicare cuts and reimbursement down. But literally, this is a fat-soluble vitamin. And some docs actually will measure the levels in your blood. If you think about it for a moment, blood is actually water-based. It's aqueous-based. So measuring something that goes into your fat, which is vitamin D3, by measuring levels in the blood, right there is a complete scientific disconnect. And I can go on and on. I go stories of we being scientists have measured surfers in Hawaii all day long to determine, this sunlight, vitamin D3 is the idea it's generated from sun and your skin, and it helps with everything from mood, blood pressure, on and on and on. It's almost sold now as a miracle pill to cure anything. But surfers in Hawaii, young surfers you'd think would have sort of maximal levels being in the sun all day, have quite the range of levels of D3 in the blood. And so here, doctors are starting to make up numbers that say, oh, we checked your blood and your levels are low. Again, it just doesn't make sense. The real problem is, this is a fat-soluble vitamin, as I said. So we don't really even know how much you have on board when you start taking supplementation. But worse, this fat-soluble vitamin has been shown to cause cancer in certain animals and certain animal models. And I know people who are in the oncology business, in the research business, and they agree categorically with me it's risky. So one of the questions people ask, well, how much should you take? And the Institute of Medicine has 800 international units. These are IUs, as they're called on the bottle. 800 is about the max you should take a day. And this is up. This is under pressure from a lot of alternative, complementary, alternative medicine groups that are trying to put pressure on it to get it to 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. I was just at a conference in San Diego last week, the American Academy of Neurology, and there the discussions were heated, again, about the debate about the risks and benefits of this. So to me, the science is clear. It's fat-soluble. It can be dangerous. Don't take much. I might take 400 international units once a week, twice a week during the wintertime. Anyway, I hope that answers your question on one of the things. These are the kinds of stuff that I like to write about and talk about and sort of guide people to intelligent decision making about health and other things.
Well, it's very interesting, and if you're just joining us, we're chatting with Dr. David Eifrig, who writes Retirement Millionaire. There's more information available at retirementmillionaire.com. Dr. Eifrig, the whole idea of supplementation, to stay on the health topic for a minute, because it's something we don't talk about often here on the program, is something that is really become mainstream. The whole holistic supplement business has gotten to be just a huge business. In your view, are there any supplements that, as someone is approaching retirement or retired, that are essential?
It depends on your diet, and I guess if you're starting at a basic fundamental, having a nice mix of vegetables, high fiber vegetables, so green leafy vegetables, lettuces, beans, depending upon the season and where you are, things that are high in fiber, fruits, supplements, really, the evidence isn't there. You can't really convince me of any benefit of some of those. Now, having said that, you have to look at and consider, does somebody have anemia? It turns out as we get older, there's a factor that's made in the esophagus called intrinsic factor, and it may be that B12, as we get a little bit older, you might need a little extra supplemental B12. But again, with the right kind of diet, some movement every day, exercising and or stretching, or even simple just putzing around in a garden, walking 15, 20 minutes a day, every other day if you can't get out every day. These things all help the body digest. They help the body move things around. And so, to just start talking blatantly about supplements, to me is risky. And great example of the dangers is calcium. I remember when I first started medical school in basic science, and I started looking at the calcium. I said, "Wow, this doesn't make sense." I mean, everybody I know, every woman I know, certainly over the age of 40, had a big bottle of calcium, and we're taking it all day long. And you look at what's in atherosclerotic disease, heart disease, calcium plaques that are in the vessels. What's the connection there? And the connection is strong. And I don't know if readers might have seen in the last couple of months, docs are backing off from recommending people taking calcium supplements. And again, this is something to me that was in the literature 10 years ago, 15 years ago was even sort of obvious for just someone like myself starting up early in medical school. And yet, the supplement marketing, the marketing of calcium, milk, these kinds of things are strong for your bones. It's just not based on good science. So these are the kind of things I write about. We try to debunk them, put it in plain English, and then I always like to say, this is what I do. So like I said, I take a multivitamin about once a week. I very rarely supplement with anything else. The exception is vitamin C. I probably take about a gram of that a day, maybe 500 to a gram a day. And if I'm around people who have colds, I might take a little bit more.
Well, Dr. Eifrig, in the time we have left, let's shift gears because with your background working with major Wall Street investment banks prior to becoming a licensed physician, you certainly obviously know a lot about investing. I'd like your opinion, given the current economic environment in which we find ourselves. Can you give us your opinion as to what U.S. stock markets, U.S. equity markets look like moving ahead in your view?
Sure. I have told people for several years on record of being bullish on the United States. I think that it's a fairly resilient place, and the new energy boom, or us finding cheaper carbon energy, will be a huge plus. We look at a lot of history and science of that history. The carbon and having fuels enables countries to grow. So I think there's good news for the U.S. and equities in general. I look at things, I'd say, more from a value investing point of view than a growth stock investing point of view. And I think that we've been really highlighting, what are the things that are are going to grow in the next 5-10 years in the U.S. And to me, it's technology, it's the energy sector, and it's healthcare. And it's as true as it was 3-4 years ago. I think it's even more so, specifically as we see these sort of cheaper places to find energy. There's talk of moving manufacturing back into the U.S. because that's made it cheaper, and that means technology. That means Texas Instruments and an Apple and an Intel can make chips here, and that means the U.S. will have sort of that boom just on the manufacturing level. Forget about the brain side of it, where you get the technology applied in real life. And then healthcare, the aging population, that's not going away. And we've got the power, technology, computing to figure out more of the science. And this is leading itself into, in a test tube, in a lab, looking at, sort of connecting up drugs, targeted drugs, receptors, and proteins. They're modeling drugs now on computers and then actually seeing that they work in live organisms. And so this is just an incredible point we're at. So yeah, I'm bullish, and I've been that way. And yes, I'm excited as we speak.
Dr. Eifrig, we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Give me your opinion as to the bond market in the U.S., speaking specifically of U.S. Treasuries, given the fiscal policies here in the U.S., given what's going on in Europe. Overall, where do you stand on sovereign debt, but in particular U.S. government debt?
Sure. It's kind of that's an easy question for me. When I was at Goldman Sachs, was in the group in the fixed income area, and we sort of specialized in thinking about these things. I'm also a student of history, so I've read Homer's The History of Interest Rates, which is thicker than 2 Bibles and got every kind of interest rate you want to know about. And so for me, I can't really predict where interest rates are going, but I can tell you that the U.S. as the world's reserve currency is kind of we've got more room than anyone could realize. I thought Europe was going to be in more trouble than it was, and they kind of talked their way out of that. And so I think the U.S. is in better shape than most other countries, and I think the new sort of level of growth in the U.S. might bring some of that debt in as we think about controlling expenditures. And this tends to all be very cyclical. But I'm not a big bond bull, and nor am I a bond bear. I think interest rates, especially on the long end of the curve, are reasonably priced given the levels of inflation as we measure it in certain areas. People sort of question me and sort of wonder about my inflation views and say, I'm missing out on things. But I mean, I don't. I look at it carefully, and we could talk about that another time. But yeah, so that's my short answer in under 2 minutes. I'm bullish on the U.S. I think as long as the dollar stays relatively high, which don't see any reason for it not to, I think we're okay.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. Our guest today, Dr. David Eifrig. Dr. Eifrig, thank you for your time. We hope you'll come back.
Dennis, thank you for having me.
Everything Financial Radio will return after these words. Stay with us.